Hi, everybody. How are you this Friday afternoon UK time? My name is Carl. Thank you for joining us here. I'm in Northern Ireland, sunny Northern Ireland. Literally, just as I started this webinar, the sun started shining through my windows, which is lovely. Welcome. As I said, my name's Carl, and I'm here on behalf of the TEFL Org. I work as a tutor here in Northern Ireland and the rest of the island of Ireland, where I do the weekend courses if you're going to study up to be a teacher. So basically, if you've taken one of our online courses and you want to add the practical component to it, and you do it in Northern Ireland, you will hopefully have to spend the weekend with me. I've got one coming up next month that I'm really looking forward to. Please, in the chat, say hello. Let us know where you are in the world. This webinar is going to principally be about teaching reading, but actually it's an open free-for-all in terms of any questions you might want to ask about teaching English as a foreign language. If you want to know how to get started, if you want to know about a specific country you want to go to, if you want to teach online, put the question in the chat and either myself or Alan's monitoring the chat, and any links that go into the chat, Alan puts them in there. If we will try and answer them as best we can. Okay, so hello, I can see the hellos coming in already. Hi there, Anne. Hi, Eve Parks in Georgia, Maria in Russia, Ellen. Hi, Ellen in Arizona, Switzerland. It'll last about an hour. Kyan, Pam, Georgia, Knox in the UK, St Albans, Ellen, Chris. Hi, everybody. Hello, 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 hello. Right, so let's get started on this teaching reading webinar. Going to start with a little PowerPoint presentation. If you've got any questions about anything as I've been going through them, then please put them in the chat, as I said. So, teaching reading. First of all, why teach reading skills? Now, quite often you don't really get, especially if you're going to be working independently as an online tutor where you're going to do your own business, for example, or if you're going to be sort of self-employed in some country somewhere, you don't often get students one-on-one asking you to teach reading skills. However, I do think it's a fantastic skill to be able to teach. It's also a fantastic an important skill to also teach within a group, I think, especially because students don't really want to learn reading so much, but I think it's personally, I think it's a key part of learning a foreign language. Okay, so why teach reading skills? But first of all, it has been proven by many people with PhDs and have done lots of research that reading is one of the best ways to learn new words. It's the best skill in order to learn new words. Now, really, you want a receptive skill to learn new words, new vocabulary, listening or reading. The productive skills, practice using those, but actually learning the new vocabulary, it comes from a listening or a reading, and reading has been shown to be a better way than listening of learning. So when you get students say to you, oh, I want to learn more words, I want to learn more English words, reading is a really good way to do this. And that's why it works well with vocabulary work as well. So if you're going to be doing some lessons where there's some sort of vocabulary element, and most lessons do, then reading works really well. Okay. The other thing is that most English as a foreign language exams involve reading. The big ones, the ones that are taken mostly around the world, for example, the IELTS test has a reading component to it. So if students are ultimately going to be taking some sort of formal English as a foreign language exam, then reading is a big part of it. Okay, so it's good to get them thinking about the different skills involved in teaching reading right from the start, from the moment you get them, okay? It can also be a good way to know if your students are improving. How do you know that? Well, because it's quite easy to grade a reading test. So if you give a student a test at the start of term, and then you give them a similar test at the end of the term, and their grades have gone up, reading is one of the best ways to judge that. Why? Because it's very easy to tick correct or incorrect on a reading test. It's a little bit more difficult to do that in a writing or a speaking test. So reading is a fantastic way of being able to track students' progress. Okay, or progress. Progress? Yeah, progress. Now, I'm going to now go into sort of the more, first of all, sort of the theoretical side of reading before moving it into talking about the activities that can be used in a typical lesson plan that would be in a reading skills exam. So first of all, I'm going to talk about the top-down approach to reading. Okay. And what is this? Top-down is basically looking at the whole text more than at word or letter level. So very often you put a text in front of a student, and the first thing they do is they look at the first word in the top left corner and then they start reading across. Okay, that's not really what top-down reading is. Top-down is looking at the whole text at pretty much the same time, or looking at specific parts of the text, not really looking at it in a word level. Although, of course, you have to read the words, but not looking at it at an individual word level. Okay, if that makes sense. Hopefully it does. So the thing that this is important to know is that the top-down approach can involve students' prior knowledge. So you're asking students to do something sometimes before they've actually read the text. That's kind of what top-down can be. So you're trying to look for the student to use the information that they have in their head to answer the sort of top-down question you're going to give them. And I'll give you some examples of a top-down one in a second. So for example, here's a top-down activity which you'll see in textbooks and which you might give the students. You might have a picture taken from a text. You might have the first headline, the first sort of chapter headline, for example, the big words that are in a bigger sized font. You might give them that, and you might say to them, okay, this is taken from the text you're about to read. With your partner, predict what do you think will be inside the text. That's a sort of top-down activity where you're looking at the whole text. You're thinking about the whole text more than an individual word. Okay. Another type of top-down activity is where you give them maybe the headings of within the whole text. So very often, especially in longer academic texts for the higher levels, there are multiple headings within the text. And you might say something along the lines of, which section do you think will contain this? What do you think will be in this section, this section, this section, the third or the fourth or the fifth section? Talk to your partner, discuss. Or you can use something called the paragraph leaders, sometimes called a topic sentence as well. That is where you take a paragraph and you delete everything except the first sentence of that paragraph. And you say, okay, just from reading the first sentence, what do you think will be in the rest of the paragraph? Okay, that's a sort of top-down activity that you might have, okay? Another thing is to check the diagrams. So you might give them some graphs. You might have a flow chart in there. You might have some before and after pictures, something like this. And you get them to look at those pictures, and from that they generate what they think the text is going to be about. They think what section might match to those pictures, something like that, where they're looking at the whole text as a whole before they actually read it word from word. This is top down. Okay, a type of real world situation where you without knowing, you might use a top down activity. So this is when you're not thinking in your foreign language, you're thinking in your own language. A real world type of situation because we want to replicate real world situations in the classroom. So something like when you're going on a website, the BBC website, for example, or even our TEFL Org website, and you're looking at the chapters, you're looking at the main links, you're reading these before you click. So you're reading them thinking, do you know what, that sounds good for me, I'm going to click on that one. Oh, that doesn't sound very good for me, I'm not going to click on this one. Personally, if I see anything with football on it, click, click, click. If I see anything where there's any sort of world news, I love it, click, click, click. Anything about the latest dress that the Kardashians are wearing, I see anything like that, I'm not having that. Anything where there's some sort of entertainment news, no, 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 thank you. I will not click on that. That's me. Some people will click on that. You're predicting what you'll find from that headline, okay? Also, like looking at the pictures within a newspaper, looking at the pictures within a magazine. As you're looking through quickly, you find a picture that's quite interesting. You think, oh, okay, that's a good picture. Wait there, I'm going to now read a little bit more. And you might just read a couple of paragraphs and realize it's not very interesting. Or you might read a couple of paragraphs and think this is quite interesting. These are sort of the real world top-down activities that we use. Another thing which makes it a bit more academic is when you're looking at chapters in an index. At the first couple of pages on a book, you're looking for specific things. You see the list of index, you see the list of chapters. You think, okay, that's the one I want. Page 47, I'm going to go there. Top down, top down, top down. Opposite of that is something like bottom up, although they quite often work together at the same time. So bottom up is looking at the text at more of a word or sentence level. Okay, so you're looking maybe for specific words, or you're looking at a whole sentence within a text to try and get some meaning, something like that. And this often involves quite specific vocabulary work, where the students have to work with their vocabulary knowledge, or using a dictionary, maybe something like this, in order to get the answers. Okay. Activities. So some typical activities that you might use in the classroom is something like find the synonyms. So within a text, you'll find links with the words. You'll find something like big, and then you'll read on a bit and there'll be something like ginormous, or there'll be something like even small, like an antonym. So words which have similar sort of meanings, and the students go through it to help them understand the text. They're looking for specific words that have links to show that there's structure within the paragraphs, to show that there's structures within the essays, looking at the coherence and the cohesion within the text. Okay. Pronoun reference is another thing like this. So you might say something like, okay, look at the pronoun here, this, or the pronoun it. What is it talking about? Okay. And then the other type of ones are who, what, where, those sort of questions. These count as bottom up. Okay, bottom up type questions where they're looking for specific things. The real world activities where we're using our bottom up knowledge is something where we're basically reading a whole novel. Very often we get a book and we read it word for word. This is a bottom up type activity where we're looking at it every single word. Okay. Story, something like that, is a whole novel. Okay. And also sometimes when we're guessing the meaning of a word in our own language. Sometimes, especially when I was at university, I would come to a word and I wouldn't understand that word. Two options: I either look in the dictionary, Google it, something like this, or I try and guess it myself. Okay, this kind of thing, guessing the meaning from a word, is a bottom up type activity. And from top down and bottom up, we come to skimming. Okay, so what is skimming? Skimming is a top-down activity. So you might not say to the students, right, today we're going to do some top-down activities. What you would probably say to the students is, right, skimming skills. I'd like you to use your skimming skills here. Okay, so give them a text. And then give them some sort of activity, which I'll get to in a minute, where they have to look at the whole text quickly to get the whole idea. That is basically a skimming type activity. And what skimming is generally about, you're looking at the whole text to get a good general idea of what the text is about. And the sort of activities that you'll see very commonly, especially in exam prep classes, is something like you match a heading to a paragraph. You give the students a list of headings, and then you give them a list of paragraphs, and they have to match that heading to that paragraph, something like that. Okay, that is a sort of a skimming activity where they have to not read every single word for word. They're just sort of looking at the whole idea of the text or the whole idea of the paragraphs. Okay, you might say something like, okay, you've got 3 minutes to read this 500 word text or 600 word text, where however many words it is depending on the level. You might reduce the time if it's a shorter text. And here are 3 summaries. Which is the best summary for the text? That's a skimming type activity. Where would you find this in the text? By looking at the headings or by looking at the location of the paragraph leader, something like that. Where would you best find this piece of information that I'm going to give you? Something like that. Okay, that's a kind of top-down activity. And the prediction type activities, like what do you think this text will contain if I give you the headline, if I give you a picture? These are sort of skimming activities. These are the sort of activities here that you might give to them in the classroom. So, of course, opposite that, we've got sort of, well, I say opposite, they're not really opposite because they work together. But talking about scanning now, okay, scanning is seen as more of a bottom-up type activity, where you're looking at the words more closely within the text. You're looking at the sort of individual text. Now, with skimming, yes, the sort of activities, of course, they need to read words, but they need to read the words and find the links all together to get the whole text. Scanning is slightly more different, where they're looking for sort of specific things within a text. That's what scanning generally is. So they can use their skimming knowledge to help them with their scanning. And always give a skimming activity before you give a scanning activity because of that. Because looking at the text of a whole can give them an overall idea, which then allows them to zero in a bit more specifically on a specific scanning thing. Okay, so activities, typical activities for a scanning type could be something like looking for the dates, looking for the names, looking for places. So if you're saying to them, okay, find the date that this happened, find who did this, find out where this happened. Okay. Another type of scanning activity would be something like where you're looking for a word that matches your definition that you're giving them. What word means a very tall person? Something like that. What word means something that's very expensive? I don't know. Where they're trying to match a definition to a specific word. That is a scanning activity. And then also something like, what does the pronoun, a specific pronoun? Now you're trying to find links before. No, this one you're looking for a specific pronoun and you're trying to refer it to that. Now, please, guys, any questions you have, please put them in the chat. Please, I'm going to get around to the questions in a minute. I can see some already coming in. Please, any chats about EFL, TEFL as a whole, please put them in the chat. I'll get round to them soon. Now, getting to exam classes. Exam classes are a big part of reading. As I said at the start, it's a big important part. Exam classes are important for reading. Okay, so what you need to do, and one of the things that you as an exam class teacher need to teach, is the technique to approach a certain type of question. So what you need to do is say to them, okay, this is a sort of question where you're looking in this bit, you're looking at this bit, or you're looking very clearly for this. Okay, exam technique. So how should a student attempt this question? Should they skim? Should they scan? How long should they spend looking for this particular question to find this particular answer? How should they attempt it? And of course, the student might say, oh, well, I would just attempt it by reading. No, you need to attempt this by looking for capital letters. You need to attempt this by looking for numbers. You need to attempt this by looking at the first sentence in the paragraph. You need to say to them, you need to attempt this by looking at this picture. You need to attempt this by looking at this diagram, something like this. Skimming and scanning have different types of ways of doing it. Okay. Scanning, you might be looking for a clue within a capital letter. Skimming, you're looking at a whole text. And that's one of the things that you need to sort of say to them. And time is a big thing about this, because a skimming question should be done quite quickly, whereas a scanning question can take quite a bit longer sometimes. Okay. If they get it wrong, if you give them a load of questions and they've got 4 wrong, it's really important. It's more important than telling them why they're right. The most important thing is to be able to tell them why they were wrong. And you need to say, okay, look, your answer's not right there. Look again quickly and see if you can find a capital letter. Look again quickly and see if you can find a synonym for this. Look again quickly and see if you can find a heading, whatever it might be. And you need to tell them, okay, try again. Oh, now I see it, teacher. It's like this. Okay. Well, that's what you need to do. You need to get them to practice the wrong mistakes. That's a big part of exam classes. And because of that, you as a teacher need to be able to defend the answer. They might say, well, no, teacher, this is definitely right because it says this. But you need to say, well, no, you are wrong because of this. And you've got to get into it at a text level. You've got to show them from the headings why they're wrong. And you need to be able to defend the answer that you're giving them. And that's a big part of reading, a teacher being able to explain why something is the answer. Okay. So what is a typical reading lesson? What is a typical reading lesson? Guys, I'm going to get to the questions in a minute. Okay. These are lovely questions. I can see some of them coming in. But I just want to get through this last slide about a typical reading lesson. What is a typical reading lesson? Okay. So it usually starts with some sort of warmer, where these are every sort of one that I've ever done. It starts with some sort of warmer. And this could be something like a photo or a discussion question to activate knowledge around the topic. So, you might say something like, tell your partner a time when you went on holiday, if the text is going to be about holidays. You might have a picture up of someone on the holidays and say, what do you think is happening here? And then they discuss it with their partner, blah, blah, blah. I think this. And then you then get into the text. So I should say that. So something like, look at the picture. What is happening? So you do something like that. Then you get into maybe a vocabulary pre-teach. That's the next typical part of a reading lesson. What's a vocabulary pre-teach? It's when you give them some words that are going to be in the text that you think they won't know. And they have to match that word to a picture. They have to match that word to a definition, because to help them know in the text what's going to be. Now, some people don't do vocabulary pre-teaches because they think that a student should be able to find a word themselves, the meaning. Fine, I'm okay with that. But I also know a lot of people do vocabulary pre-teaching, and I think also that is also relevant. Mix it up a little bit. Sometimes do a vocabulary pre-teach, sometimes don't. Okay. And then you do some sort of skimming question, some sort of activity where they're looking at the text as a whole. So look at this headline. What do you think it will be about? Give them 3 minutes to do this, and then you check the answers with them. They check the answers with each other. They check the answers with them. And you get to, why do you think that, Jose? Well, I think it because of this heading here. Okay, Jose, good. Maria, why do you think this? Well, I think it because of this picture here. Let them look at the text as a whole, some sort of prediction. Very often they're prediction, because predicting is a big part of our reading. Okay. And then you get into the scanning questions. The scanning questions might be something like, who did this? When did this happen? Why did this happen? Slightly longer ones, but a why is also one. How did this happen? Similar like why, maybe. How many of this was? So they're scanning for a number. Which person, which animal, which country, something like this, where they're scanning for a specific piece of information. Once they find the word that they think is relevant for this question, they then read either side of that word to try and find the answer. Okay. Then there might be, you can see that skimming question I've put there singular. Very often it's just one skimming question. Scanning questions, plural. Because when you look at it as a whole, that's what we do in the real world. We decide if we want to read it. No, we don't want to read it. Okay, you go on to the next one. However, in a classroom, they have to read it. So you give them that skimming question, then you give them the scanning questions afterwards. Okay, and then some sort of productive activity, something like they write something to continue the story. They write something from a point of view, something like this. Or they could even write an essay question where the knowledge gained from the reading would help them, something like this. Or some sort of question where they speak to their partner, or you could have a debate, something like this. Some sort of activity where they're not using their listening so much, they're not using the reading so much. Maybe they're using the knowledge that they gained from it, but they're producing something with their mouths, or they're producing something with their pens. Thank you, guys. I'm going to get through to these questions now. I hope that was useful. Thank you very much for bearing with me as I went through that one. So hello, and there's all the nice hellos. Hello. Someone's in Vietnam. I hope the lockdown's going okay in Vietnam. I lived in Vietnam for a while, and at the moment I know that it's quite difficult in Vietnam. So please stay safe in Vietnam. Who was that in Vietnam? I've forgotten. I've lost the name. Oh no, I'm so sorry. Whoever it was in Vietnam, good luck. All right. Hello in Kenya, Togo. Wow, got some people in from Africa. That's fantastic. John, no problem. Lindy, hello. Question on both skinning and scamming. How would you help them if they don't get it? Practice is the most important thing. And I think, teaching them don't think of it as like a reading. Think of it as like an exam technique. Or if it's a general English, how to approach something. So what you might need to do in order to do that is give them a text with bits covered up to do a skimming, type thing. Okay. Scanning, you might say something like, okay, what do you think this answer will look like? And it might be something like, it'll look like an answer. It'll look like a number. Okay, so you use your eyes to scan for numbers. Oh, teacher, I think it will look like a capital letter because it's a name. Fantastic. Well done, Jose. Jose, scan through, look for names, look for capital letters, something like this. So you don't just give them the questions and tell them, go, do it, read. You have to give them the questions and show them time and time after again how to approach those questions. And you might help that by covering up bits. You might help that by giving them sections at a time, something like that. Okay, you might even help them by just doing the first one together, and then in a scanning type ones, you might do the first one together, then you go through and do 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 individually. Check your answers. Hope that helps you there, Lindy. Thanks for your question. Nicole was that. Hello, Nicole. At what point in your career do you stop feeling nervous before teaching a class? Right. I still feel nervous before teaching a new class every single time. Every time I do some work for a university in the UK, and they give me a new class every term, and I feel nervous before meeting that class every term. So I think you don't. Even after me doing it 20 years, I still feel a bit nervous before meeting any class. Now, after a couple of classes with that group, I then don't feel nervous so much. And the key part of that, I think, is being prepared, Nicole. So, making sure that you've spent the time preparing the class helps. Also, just, I think, it comes with experience a bit. Okay, right, tomorrow I'm going to be teaching writing skills. Right, I've taught writing skills before. I know how to do this with that class before. This is what went wrong. Now I know that this will go better this time because I will do this instead. So you definitely comes. But there are still nerves before I meet every group. I think that's completely normal, Nicole. Okay. Jessica, hello. I should have said for Nicole, if anybody else has got any tips on how to not be nervous, please put them in the chat. That would be fantastic because I'm sure everybody has definitely felt this. Sorry, thanks, Alan, for skipping back on that one. Jessica, hello. You want to ask, would I weave, I like that, weave, reading into a lesson about a particular grammar point? Reading into a lesson, or is it better to standalone reading lesson as a skills lesson? Good point. Both. is my quick answer to that one. So grammar can come from, very often grammar comes from some sort of receptive part first, and then they produce it. That's a typical sort of grammar, traditional grammar type lesson. There's different ways of delivering grammar, but that's a very typical in the PPP, for example, structure. So you might give them a reading text and then they have to find some words and then get the grammar of that. However, you should never give a reading text if it's only going to be about grammar. What you need to do is give a reading text and also have a skimming, and maybe just if the main focus of your lesson is grammar, maybe just have 2 scanning questions. You've got to make them understand the text before they work on the grammar from within the text. If that helps you, Jessica. Now, you might not go into too much, especially if you've only got the students for an hour, into the skimming and scanning skills needed for those questions that you're giving them. But what you might do, have a separate lesson where you're going to do like an hour-long lesson where you're just working on skimming skills, or you're just working on scanning skills, or you're working on a bit of both in that hour. So I hope that helps you. You can do reading as a standalone skills lesson. You can also do reading within a particular grammar point. Okay. Good luck with that, Jessica. Alex, hello. Yeah, Alex, you're with us as usual. Hi. Thanks for coming. The man with the fantastic name. Do I always set homework? Do I always set homework? For the students you teach online? I'm just trying to get your grammar right there, Alex. Or is that me? What should I say to students if some don't do the homework? It hasn't happened to me yet, but just wondering in case it does in the future. Interesting. Right. The number one thing, I know in your case, Alex, I think you're talking about individual students that you're finding yourself. Is that correct? If they are individual students that are paying you to sit with them for an hour or something like that, if they don't do the homework, I don't think there's much you can do about it. However, what I would do is I would write a little log about, because if they're expecting for you to improve their ability and you're not, and they're not improving, and then they're not doing their work and they're not doing the homework, they think that it's just from turning up they can do it, then that's not really on you. There's also got to be some work from them. So I would have a little log book where I'd be like, because it's always blokes. Alex didn't do his homework that I set that time. And then when they come back to you and say, well, look, I'm not really improving, I can say, well, look, do you know what? You didn't do your homework. That's what I would say. If it's a group lesson where you're working for another company and they're not doing the homework, for example, that's slightly different. If it's continuously happening, I would go to the course leader, the manager, the senior teacher, whatever it might be, and say, look, Alex isn't doing his homework. Okay, that's what I would do. I hope that answers, Alex, your question. Jessica, no problem at all about the wonderful slides. I'm glad they were excellent. Miles and Coffee, hello from Mexico. He's enjoying it so much. He's shouting, which is fantastic. Good, Joanne. Mary, hello. How do I feel about a project like reading a short book, for example, Animal Farm? Their spoken English is good, but reading and writing is a bit behind. You very often find with some cultures that their speaking might be better than their reading and their writing, because naturally in their own first language they speak more. If it's quite a spoken culture, then that's a big thing. Now, there was a bit before there where you're talking about refugees with reading, right? Now, giving them a book where you are giving them the book, you're choosing the book is okay, but you've got to be good with choosing the book. It's got to be a book that you think they're going to enjoy. What you might want to go down is, instead of giving them an actual book, is giving them newspaper articles that you could maybe take, photocopy, something like that, or copy and paste, or magazine articles. Especially if they're young, you would give them different ones every week. So you might one week give them a music thing, And, you know, Mary, I'm an old fella. When I'm teaching the kids in their teenage years, I've got no idea what sort of music they listen to. I just go with something like BBC Radio 1 or something like that. And then you might do sport the next week. And then you might do something on fashion. I don't know. All the cliches. And do that to pique their interest more. Because if you give them Animal Farm, I like Animal Farm, but if you give them Animal Farm, if they hate Animal Farm, you've kind of lost them. All right. They've got to be able to want to read it themselves. Now, a different way to go down this route, Mary, is to get them to find a book or a novel that they enjoy themselves. And you can get something called graded readers. Hopefully the local library, or you can look online. Graded, Graded, graded readers, which is where they get popular stories and they reduce the vocabulary level, they reduce the grammatical level, the publishers, in order for it to be accessible to lower levels. And you might say to them, right, let's do a book club where we're going to use these graded readers and see if you can find any of them online. Okay, see if they can get any local to them. You'd be surprised how many they can find. And they then get to do more different types of books over the course of a month, for example. And then that way they're going to enjoy it more. Giving them just one book is you're flipping a coin. Are they going to like it or they're not going to like it? Mary, I hope that answers your question. Thank you, guys. Right, now let me keep reading these. Nicole, hello again. In reading activities, do I get the students to read the text individually on their own? Do they read it in groups? What's the best way? Right. If you're giving them a text and you're saying read it together, you know, it's quite difficult. Okay. You know, you might confuse them. How do they read it together? What you want to get them to do is read the text individually and then check the answers together. Then that way, if one's got it right or one's got it wrong or they disagree, they can work together to try and work it out. So there's always that student-to-student interaction, but not in the specific moment when they're actually doing the text. Yeah, when they're checking their answers is when they come together. Okay. Hope that works out. User 99. There was 98 other users, were there? Okay. Or do you really like 99 ice creams? I quite like 99 ice creams. Hi, Carl. Hi. You're from London. You have an interview next week to teach in Shanghai. The salary is between £1,100 to £1,600 per month, dependent on experience. Does this sound average for a position in China? Mr. or Mrs. 99, could you give me more information, please, about what else you might get? Does that include your accommodation? Does that include your health insurance? How many hours a week will you be working? Are the lessons prepared for you? Where in Shanghai will you be living? Will you be living in the center of Shanghai? Or will you be living an hour outside Shanghai center, which is also still called Shanghai? I need more information, 99. I need to know. Pam, lovely bit of tips there about being less nervous. Thank you. And Mr. or Mrs. HR Parks. Thank you. Enjoying. I'm glad everybody's enjoying the tips. Thank you. John, hello. Could a play be used in a lesson where each student has a part and they read their part into... John, how lovely that sounds. Yes, definitely. I've definitely done plays. Now, you don't want to overdo the plays. Why don't you want to overdo the plays? Because how often do you read a play in your life? Now, I don't know about you, John. You might sit at home and read the Andrew Lloyd Webber plays every day. I personally don't know many people that do that. Perhaps I should know more people. And in fact, I'd like to know more people that do that. But I think that it's definitely something you could do, and you could definitely do more. You could do activities where, in terms of what do people think, or you could do it act or scene at a time where they then work on some vocabulary. You could do lots of lovely productive activities from a plan where you would say something like, okay, you are the jilted lover. Write a letter to your ex-lover telling them what you really think, or something like that. Whatever the play might be, okay. Get them lots of nice things you can do that, but just don't overdo that. Okay. Thank you guys. I'm really glad that everybody's really enjoyed all the helpful things. I'm trying to scroll down, see if there's any more questions. Sorry, I think I've forgotten. I think I've gotten through them all, which is fantastic. Really good. So I'm just going to show you one other thing that's just come up, because I know that many people want to get into TEFL, and I'm just going to quickly just show our website. Okay, so this will also go back to Mr. or Mrs. 99, who's I've just seen put some information in those, because what you really want to know in terms of knowing whether something's a good salary is if you look at all the average of the salaries. What do the packages for other countries in Shanghai have? Something like that. So what I would recommend is you go to our website, TEFL.org, and you click at the top here, jobs, and you could do view all jobs, browse by country. Then you go through the jobs. And if you're not sure about whether the wage is good or the package is good, have a look at some of the others and see what you can find. See if yours matches up to theirs. Okay. Also go on eslcafe.com, look on there, see if there's some things that you can find. Okay. The other thing that I would recommend is if you go to our website, tfl.org, and you click on this section over here, which is the blog bit, it will take you to this section here. You could click on something like China, type in something like China, see what comes up about learning China. This is a fantastic one that I really recommend anybody who wants to teach online at the moment about China. This has gone up this week, talking a bit about the new situation that's happening in China in terms of the companies and the regulations that the government's putting on there. And just sort of have a look through here and see about what they say about wages, and see what they say. Use your skimming and your prediction techniques to see whether you think it would work and whether it will actually help you out. So that's just a couple of things I want to just highlight there. I've seen Mr. or Mrs. 99. Sorry, accommodation, healthcare, free round trip, visa, teaching training is provided. Well, then I think that probably it sounds like you've got not a bad little package there, to be honest. What was it, 1,100 to 1,600 pounds? Yeah, if you've got the accommodation included, if you've got your healthcare included and stuff like that, what you need to sort of work out is how much your travel expense is going to be in Shanghai, that kind of thing. Really, you got to think that the schools don't really want their teachers to be poor. They want people to stay for a year. They like teachers to stay for a while. So you don't often find jobs where especially where you have to go face-to-face teaching, where companies are taking the mickey a bit. I've seen some online jobs where it's a bit like that, but face-to-face, in-person jobs where they're paying for your flights and all this kind of thing, they generally know what to do, and they generally know how much to pitch the money is. I would also sort of have a look, I think, as Alan's just put in, look at the other job adverts, that kind of thing, and research that. I think that's a fantastic thing to do. I think 1,100 to 1,600 pounds, whatever it was, sounds not too bad, especially if it's one of your first jobs, Mr. or Mrs. 99. I hope that works out for you. Thank you, everybody. That is the end of our time this Friday afternoon. I hope you've enjoyed teaching, learning about teaching reading. Please let us know in the chat if you liked this or you didn't like this webinar, if you've got any ideas for future webinars that you'd like us to cover. Please like the video. If you want to know more about getting into TEFL, you can contact us on our Facebook page. You can also contact us on our website. Leave some comments in the videos underneath. We read all the comments. Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy your weekend. I hope you have a really good one. Bye-bye.